What's up? Hello, everybody. Friday night, hanging out. Uh, we're back again to talk about maybe some more aftermath from the Charlie Kirk assassination. I can't kind of can't get over it. It's very important moment, and I haven't been going live much in a while, but I've done 3 nights in a row now, just because I chat. I feel like there's like this kind of inflection point, and I don't know, it's hard to get the head off it. It's like when you see that the conversation is now about whether you endorse cold-blooded murder or not, for the crime of having an ill-defined wrong viewpoint, like nobody quite knows what it is, and there's a kind of a conversation going on around that. To me, it's a massive societal moment, and it's not actually about Charlie Kirk. He's at the center of this. I see all this kind of debate about, like, oh, what's is it really that salient or significant or relevant in Ireland or all this? And it's like, how could it not be? It's not about chat there, orange tea, I don't know, long name there, but it does feel like a new 2016. It really does. This kind of like a reset, but also onto some next level. I don't know. It's I struggle to kind of and not to like make it out like this emotional, oh, I'm having lots of feelings or whatever. I just mean cognitively, you know what I mean? Not even like, oh, I've complex feelings now and stuff. It's more like just at a rational level as well, I kind of don't just, how do I put it? It's like I don't want to be alone with it. I find myself following. I'm more glued to what the discourse is, and all of that at the moment. And it's good to be on speaking here to you as well. It's kind of more cathartic, better. So I imagine a lot of you might be the same way as well. Just seeing this, let's say, call it discourse unfold. There's a magnitude to it, like I say. And again, the that's not relevant. That's Yank stuff. That's not Ireland. That's Con Inc. stuff. Charlie Kirk was a Zionist. All that. Yeah, don't fall into this anti-leftist trap. Playing the game, being this kind of a pawn, political pawn, and I'm always talking about that. So I know that point. But this is distinct from that because it's not about supporting Charlie Kirk. It's not about, if you're smart, becoming a big enemy of the left in quotes. It's not about that. It's about like the reaction to it among a certain class of people and how that class of people ultimately have regime endorsement. And I know I've said some of this lately anyway, but I just feel like it needs to be repeated and needs to keep being talked about. The likes of Joe Brawley, if you're Irish, you'll know. These are regime affiliated people in effect, right? These talking heads, institutional figures. Like I said last night, Micheál Martin, any of those people, they won't have a balaclava on, they won't have the Antifa language so much, but in effect, they are, as we know, hand in hand effectively. The distance between the official regime and Antifa is much shorter than most people understand. They are effectively shock troops of it all. And possibly as well, a lot of the more murderous, I'm watching chat here, it's quite simply good versus evil indeed. A lot of the more blood-curdling language and the laughing and dancing and enjoying, or it's not even enjoying the death. Like, people are like that. Ruth Bader Ginsburg died, people laughed or whatever, right? And right-wingers enjoyed that. The American Supreme Court judge who was like a left-winger or whatever, right? There's There's a difference. There is a difference. You know, the crab dance thing when someone dies, sort of a little bit of macabre, edgy online humor in that way is one thing. I'm not prissy with that stuff at all. I think the internet is fun. I think it's controversial. I think it's edgy. That's whatever in itself. And that's, let's say, when someone just dies. Someone dies of natural causes, and people go, oh, "We hated her anyway. Fuck her. Fuck him. Whatever." Like whatever your opinion on that, I don't endorse it. But you know what I mean? It's just the internet. I'm not a pearl clutcher. It's the fact that it was obviously an assassination, and they're not just sort of. It's not the fact that they're laughing that Charlie Kirk died. I don't know Charlie Kirk. I didn't agree with him, any of that. It's that they are actively, in a continuous fashion, endorsing and promoting murder as a new level of normal. Like I've seen them harassing like mommy bloggers and sort of like normie liberal, like Melanie Murphy. She's a Irish like mam blogger or whatever, the epitome of normie. Almost apolitical, broadly sort of liberal, you know, like person of her time or whatever. But kind of like a normal person, aspirational, middle class, whatever, that sort of, or like the viewers look at her as like, I wish I was cool like her or whatever. For like effectively middle-aged women, or like, you know, women from the age of 25 to 45 or whatever. She was on, someone showed this to me, and it was her basically saying, I don't agree with Charlie Kirk, but I don't think he should have been killed in front of his children like that, despite the differences. And there were a bunch of Antifa types. She was given out about it, that they were swarming her, given out to her. So do you remember in 2020 when you had to post a black square on your Instagram, or else you weren't racist, but you weren't sufficiently liberal, you weren't sufficiently fashionable, you weren't sufficiently moral or whatever, right? The new line of that is that it's not posting a black square, it's that you have to be at the least okay with a man getting slaughtered in front of his children from far away. And if you're not, you're just as bad as the far right, you're just as whatever. That's it's hard to fathom that. But it's being pushed, and I think a lot of it some of it might be botted. I'd say there is an element of that, definitely. There are big shadowy forces at play, and so not everything, you can't just take every comment online or every amount of likes or whatever as a given. Like that would be foolish. But a good extent of it is definitely real. There are genuinely people who've bought into it. People, and it blows my mind. You have these, like, the one thing that's really freaky is the young women on TikTok. It's not, obviously not all of them, a minority, but of the people who are freakishly macabre and cruel and actively endorsing violence and murder, not just that's happened, but endorsing it to go forward in the most craven, sort of provocative way. Not all young women are doing that, far from it, but a lot of the people who are doing that are young women, self-styled, trendy, fashionable, like, you know, online, like TikTokers age like 20 or whatever, right? There is something 100% demonic about that, for sure. And I don't I don't think they are born evil. They are just a product of their time, not even their time, of the regime, time, place, system that they live in. They have been imbued and indoctrinated, brought to that point. That is not natural at all. It's completely fucked up. But yeah, I've been arguing with, not arguing, but I've been trying to kind of debate some of these people. I said that Charlie Kirk was a moderate, And a lot of leftists or Antifas or whatever they are were kind of guffawing at me if he wasn't moderate at all or whatever. And it was mad just trying to get through to them for the crack, for the sport of it, to say to them, you know, I know you don't think he was moderate because he disagrees with you, or you disagree with him. Say, yeah, he just spouted bile. He just spouted, fluted, fucking vile, whatever. Putting all these little words, you know, fascist or this or that, or he said this or he said that, and you're just kind of going, no, I get that. Like, I'm a grown adult, right? I'm a rational. He was the most moderate, but like, I'm a rational grown adult with a brain, so I can actually obviously park like my views. I know obviously know what my views are, right? I know what they are. I know what my beliefs are, my views are, my disposition is. I'm aware that I have those things. Same way I'm aware that I am a certain height and I'm a certain hair and other people are different. And, you know, I don't think I am the world or something, right? I'm able to distinguish those kind of things, including my consciousness. It's kind of so obvious, it's weird to point out. And yet you're speaking to these people and they're saying, no, but he was terrible and wrong, so he's not moderate because he said this, that, and the other. And you go, well, I know you think that. But of course, he doesn't think that, didn't think that. And here's data on like millions and millions of people who see it kind of his way as well. And these reprehensible things you're saying that he said and posting or beliefs that he had, actually a lot of people think that, certainly in America in particular. So you do understand that he could still be moderate relative to everything else, relative to people to his, say, left, right, all these different views. He's just objectively moderate. And they could not fathom the idea that, no, I know, but he said something that was racist and bad or whatever it is. They can't fathom it. And I was trying to say, I know, but like, you do realize, like, the things that you would accuse, the average things that you would accuse a fascist, we'll say, of believing, and that's what makes them liable for a unilateral death sentence. Like, you do realize that, take for example minorities and all this, that the average African, let's just say, because you love black people, the average African in Africa would share those views to the point that they wouldn't even consider them political viewpoints. They would just consider them a default of reality, right? So, and same goes for like most people in China, most Indians, you know, they would believe that they're broadly kind of ethno-nationalistic. The fact that we even have, they don't even have words for that, right? That they're into gender roles to some extent. You know, these various beliefs that are like they're sort of what is called in the West homophobic. Like, they're not that comfortable with, you know, public displays of homosexuality or any of that kind of stuff. Certainly transgenderism and all that. Like, these things would be such a given. So it's like, you do realize that you're accusing me or whoever else it is, Charlie Kirk or whoever, of being like for a death sentence for that. But that's what actually most of the world believes. So that's another facet of like the moderateness of it. But you don't like pay attention to that. You only pay attention to these figures that you're told are evil and harbor some evil thing. It just doesn't make any sense, you know. When you try to reason with them, I said to one guy, what if I told you Putin was moderate? And he says to me, moderate as compared to what? I'm just basically, here's the nightly, I'm telling you what I did on Twitter today. But anyway, he said, moderate as compared to what? And I said, moderate compared to an NCAD student or an EU-funded NGO. And I was like, only joking, you know, obviously not compared to that, compared to Russian domestic politics broadly and the global population as a whole, and sort of global geopolitics broken up by nations, he would be like a centrist or whatever. Like, would that blow your mind? Do you know? Would it blow your mind that someone, that your upbringing, your institutional information environment that you are exposed to, there are certain beliefs in that that aren't actually just the world at all. That there are not only people in faraway countries like China and Russia and Africa or continents or whatever, who like absolutely have no understanding or relationship of these views you have, and they don't, definitely wouldn't see them to be true or right or appropriate or any of that stuff. And they would basically all be fascists according to you if you were applying it. But people within your own society, and people in other Western countries, you do realize that they have those views and they just believe it to be true, and they just think the thing that you're saying is true isn't true, and they think the thing that you're saying is bad and reprehensible. They actually just don't think it's bad. They genuinely think that's not bad, and the opposite view is good. Do you not understand that? Does that? They just can't actually compute. So demented are they? So I'm not saying they're demented for being woke and supporting transgenderism. That's one thing, whether you believe that or not. It's like, okay, I can accept that I think you're wrong, but I know you support that. I understand that in your mind, you think that's good, right? And do you not understand that in my mind, I think this other thing is good? And there's a bit of an objective thing there where, we have different views. It's kind of mental. And the other thing as well, and also like, like your view is narrow. Like, it is not hegemonic in reality at all. Like, do you know what I mean? Most people, if you really ask them, are not comfortable with transgenderism, let's just say, right? Transgender policies, like maybe they don't mind what someone is privately, but in a public sphere, schools, any of that stuff, they wouldn't, like, if you ask them, if you gave them the opportunity honestly to say, oh, I'm sure you'd have like well over 90% would be like, yeah, I'm 100% like not comfortable with that, don't like it. So do you realize that, yeah, you're calling me a fascist or this or that person a fascist, or Charlie Kirk, let's kill him, he's a fascist or whatever, but you do realize that if you were to actually care to know, you'd understand and know that 90% of people are fascists who are up for a death sentence. You just, I don't know, you're just not choosing to apply it to them. You don't want to know. You don't like, what sort of control thing is it really? Like, there's no logic there, and there is no moral core. There's no principle. There's no nothing. It is just a pure black hole of like obviously indoctrination, but also just like moral nihilism, if that's not too much of a contradiction. Like a complete lack of an ability to empathize effectively, to appreciate the differences between your view and someone else's view, and accept that. Ultimately, tolerance, you could call it. Ben Scallon had a good post earlier. I mean, in regards to this, he just said, so what was it? I'll find it. I'm just going to start sharing up some screen here now and just hang out and scroll with you. But that's not what I want. I'll move that over here. And let's get rid of that. Yeah, so yeah, he basically said like most people on a building site would be significantly to the right of someone like Charlie Kirk. And it's so true. It's like, yeah, so like this person who's going around like casually, like whether it's some like witch on TikTok, like literal witch, like a ironic witch or whatever, on TikTok, or some nose ring or some bug man or whatever, like you do realize that while you're going on saying X or Y person should have a death sentence, like you're tweeting that from your phone as you walk down the road. But if you looked up to your right, there's 3 fellas on scaffolding, and there's every chance, not to caricature just builders or whatever, but there's every chance that like they're fascists as well. Look, they're up there, get them, and that person who you're in a coffee shop, there's like half the people around you in reality would, like, if you were actually poll them, they honestly answer, they're free to tell you what they actually believe. They're all fascists as well. The bar is very low, like, I had another discussion with a guy, very intelligent, on X. I could find it for you, but he actually referred to something I'd said in a stream weeks ago, and I was like, wait, so you're watching my streams? And he wasn't being aggressive to me, and he was obviously intelligent, not a dumbass, not ignorant, but he seemed to be anti-fascist and distinguishing what a fascist is or isn't, right? This is mad. Because I had said, people who oppose immigration are basically labeled fascists. And he said, no, not quite. Not everybody who opposes immigration is quite a fascist. It can be determined, but it's not necessarily just if you're against immigration. That can be permitted under the right circumstances, type of thing. And I was like, okay, interesting. Okay, what's the difference? Like, and I go back and forth. And he's basically saying, if it's a form of ethnic chauvinism, basically you could oppose it on just the numbers, the resources, the this or that or the other, and that might be legitimate. But if it's to do with ethnic chauvinism and all the rest of it, then it goes into fascism, and that's to be determined by anti-fascists. And I'm going, okay, so again, we're back to, are you going around asking Indians about this? Like in Ireland, Indians themselves, like, have you paid attention? Do you listen to what they say? Do you talk to them? Do you analyze their own media, their own social networks or whatever? Are you familiar with who does or doesn't in Ireland support BJP in India? That would, under Antifa definitions, BJP would be fascist. So are you paying attention to them, or is it just a white thing? So now it's that you can be against immigration, but not in a way that is ethnically chauvinistic, even though that's the natural default of the entire people of the world, effectively throughout history, in some fashion. People say nationalism was invented in the 17th century. Keith Woods has debunked that well, this kind of stuff, or the 18th century or whatever. But just, common sense would tell you that however nations formed over time, there was a time when Italy and Germany didn't actually exist. It was made up of different principalities, and it shifts around. But at essence, a form of local chauvinism, tribalism, self-protection, and all that kind of stuff. So if it wasn't Germany, it was some region or a sub-region or a village or something like that. People will always be, or a group, an ethnic group, even a religious group, whatever. That is normal. It can be bad. It can be good. It's a big spectrum. It can be too much, and all this kind of stuff. But the basic of being chauvinistic or ethnic or nationalistic or a little bit tribal or any of that, you do realize that that's the absolute vast majority of the entire world, and probably of the entire country or the West as well, if people were allowed to be honest. And you're this minuscule minority of people who, for one reason or another, got put up to believing this thing. Basically, the whole concept of fascism, you're accused of fascism. You would think, oh, that's someone who has a gas chamber out their back garden and they run around the place doing Sieg Heils or something like that. It's like, no, it's not. It's basically nothing to do with that. It's just when you strip it down, like you could say, I've never even heard of Germany, or I've no knowledge of it at all, really. I vaguely know about some of it, but I hand on heart have nothing to do with it. But I am a little bit chauvinistic, and I do want immigration to stop on that basis, or to be reduced or whatever. So according to your terms, I'm now a fascist, right? But anyway, I'm going back and forth with this guy discussing, like, I'm just letting him have it. Just go, you tell me all about how it works. And just, it dawns on me how sort of fucked up it is that we're discussing this guy has the floor to deliberate, to hold court and say what is or isn't, and this person is a suspected one, and this person, all this kind of stuff, right? On matters that are normal, like being nationalistic, being a bit chauvinistic, all the rest. But belying all of this is the idea of a unilateral death sentence. Like this is like Mongol stuff. Like this would make the Huns and the Mongols look, their moral code, right? Put a village to the sword or whatever it might be, or to take their women and burn the place, all that. It would kind of make their moral code or whatever look like um peace and love, wouldn't it? Like it's the most like cruel, barbaric, illogical, power-based, disgusting sort of thing. There's no justice. There's no, and like the thing I never got onto him to say was, okay, you're intelligent. You're treating me with respect in this conversation. I am with you, but we're kind of the elephant in the room is that there's a death sentence attached to this. Like, so we're quibbling on the particulars of this little thing, but like, I mean, there's a death sentence attached to what is or isn't. Isn't that the basis of what we're talking about here a little bit? And then the thing I wanted to ask him was, if this is so off the wall, why is it that this is basically taking Antifa at face value with an open heart, let's say, right? It's kind of like as we're, this is a rare thing for me talking about it with you. Why can't we talk then? Let's say I give it to you. You need to kill the Nazis because they're chauvinistic about their country and their people. You need to kill them, and you can decide sort of really subjectively. But why can't they talk? Like, as in, if the person is going to be killed for being chauvinistic or something like that, and you're the judge, jury, and executioner on these subjective terms, surely at the very least, I should be able to have a lengthy discussion with you, an ongoing one, you people, to say, well, I am chauvinistic, but I'm not bad. I'm chauvinistic, but I think it's fair enough, though, is it not? Let me explain. But of course, the Antifa doctrine is no parazan, no talking. Not only can you not talk to them, but if someone else talks to them, they are also a fascist. And the new line now is that if you're not okay with them being murdered, maybe you too are a fascist enabler, which is 1 degree away from fascist. Like, you are dealing with the most extreme and cancerous ideology I've ever heard of. I like something like, I don't know, whatever the Waco people believed, or what were they called? The person who did the poisoned a subway in Japan back in the 90s or something, killed people. They were part of some weird cult, or any sort of bizarre millenarian death cult or whatever, Jim Jones. It's just kind of like, well, the Antifa ideology, and not like, I'm not mischaracterizing it. If you actually break it down into its constituent parts and all of that, you go, it makes all of those things look very, very tame. And it's not just an ideology, because it does connect up to the murder, and the people who support the Antifa ideology genuinely do support the murders, and the murders happen. So it's like, this isn't like, oh, the manifesto is funny, or it's not the manifesto plays out, and the people actively back it up in real time. So it is a real thing. Davidians or whatever, any sort of strange cult you come across where it's got this kind of death aspect and this like serious abuse aspect, and this central control of power where like this one man or one little cadre get to decide who's crossed the will of God or whatever it is, that kind of thing. It's at that level, because you're going, the fascist, like the terms are so vague, and you don't get to say, can I have my view though? Can I dispute the charge? Can we dispute the terms of the charge, the logic of it, the whole premise of this court. Am I allowed to, or am I just in chains here and it's just is what it is? It's completely off the wall, and I'm sure a lot of you did. I don't know, like, for anybody, a few people who are watching, it's late. I lose all of you doing this. This isn't good stream practice, but I'm sure a lot of you saw Nick Fuentes's show on the Charlie Kirk thing. I thought it was very good. I share a lot of those thoughts. I'm sure a lot of you do as well. Well put together, and some new thoughts as well that I hadn't had, which is always good, aspects to it. But the whole idea that you are dealing with almost like supernatural evil forces, and the consequences of how to deal with that and how not to deal with it and all the rest. And the thing I think that he didn't focus on, I don't know, I'm sure he gets it, but didn't focus on. But the thing that I think is very salient as well is the connection, that it would be grand if you were just dealing with some sort of death cult freaks in the corner, a certain number of them. But at the end of the day, this ideology, this Antifa ideology, this post-World War II, all of that, it goes right to the, like I've said before, van der Leyen's and banks and the whole structure that we have. The druggy cream cracker Gambin, who's being investigated by CAB, let's say, in Ireland, who is being given a €2 million contract to basically warehouse migrants in a basically human trafficking, and in a lot of ways probably pimp them out on the side to escort Ireland and have them doing a bit of work in a mushroom farm and all this stuff. People who are making millions off that, whether they know it or not, they are in bed with the same structure, the same hydra of Antifa. This whole thing we're living under. I can't remember his name, but I don't know if you saw recently Tucker Carlson. There was a guy on with him talking about the US military and how they effectively traffic drugs into the West from the likes of Afghanistan and all of that, flood communities and that whole narrative. I always thought that was a bit kooky, but it was fleshed out. And to me, there's no doubt about it that like Western capitals are intentionally being flooded with heroin. That's a whole thing I could go into. I could defend that thesis as well a bit more. But, this kind of drug epidemic is by design. It's not normal. If a city was left to anarchy, the heroin problem would be cleaned up in about a week. Let's be real. The junkies would just be carted away and dried out and kind of kept like forcibly taken away for their own good. And the dealers would be given a fair trial, and the ones who are big time and have done it a lot over and over and over again, they would either be given maybe one chance or something like that. But like anyone who's repeatedly doing it flagrantly at a mass scale would ultimately just be hung, right? And the problem would shore up really quickly, and that would be that. But that would nature basically would heal. Like, I mean, it's intolerable to see that. Nobody wants that. And yet it happens in all these diffuse different Western capitals. You look at the opium wars with China and all of that. It seems to be an MO of like the British, American, the Western kind of regime. And we see it in our cities in Dublin. All these ugly things, the heroin trade with the human trafficking trade, like I say, the druggy dealer Gambin, it's kind of guy. The deals are like, let's say, just to take the asylum centers thing, it's archetypal, as I love to say. It's like a leading edge of this thing. We all see it. It's ugly. That is now being ran, not just by random hoteliers, but for the contracts. They're bringing in the most, you see pictures of them, absolute criminals, the type of fellas who would enslave people openly in chains, you and me, and foreigners, if they were only let, these people are the most amoral, rough scumbags, scum of the earth. They belong in jail probably for lots of different reasons. And yet, not only do they walk free, but they're handed millions. They're basically in business with the state, because that's who the state has to do business with, because it's so fucking filthy what they're doing. You had a guard of 10 years ago or whatever was investigated for, someone must have ratted him out. He was signing immigration documents for Indians by the hundreds to let them in. And when he signed it, it was the golden ticket for them to get in and get housing and all the rest of it. So basically a human trafficking scam, probably costing the state tens of millions ultimately, right? As a guard, which is should be a very official position. That should be high treason, right? And he was investigated. I'm sure they had they had him dead to rights. He was in the paper. They said allegedly or whatever, but I'm sure it was dead to rights allegedly. That's it, right? And it just disappeared. And then a few years later, he popped up again, because this time he was actually being convicted for accused of sexually assaulting women, and I believe it was migrant women. So as he's running this scam allegedly with some Pakistanis or whatever, he's also using his kind of power in the area and with these migrants, I assume, to go hit up these migrant women, to go feel them up, to go molest them, to whatever. And because they're all running the scam and these people are being ran through it, I suppose he has power over them. I've signed your, so he's doing that. Now he eventually gets tripped up and caught up on that. But I was reading the article of that, and it referred back to the previous thing, the overall human trafficking scam. And it said that it was ran up to the DPP, who decided not to prosecute it because it was a complex case. And they just left it, right? And I'm thinking, okay, so you let that scumbag just go. I mean, it can't be that complicated. You could have prosecuted him. They couldn't prosecute him because it's too connected back to what the state does. The human trafficking, the sexual abuse, the drugs, the exploitation, the shadow bank, all that kind of stuff that happens around Ireland. It is a filthy, corrupt, abusive, evil system. And Antifa, to get back to the point, are part of that, the filth, the evil, the whole thing. So Antifa are not an isolated sort of cult. They are, like I said, a sort of a shock troop leading edge of the regime to confront its detractors and opponents. That's what they are. They are the sort of frontline degenerate scumbags, and even these TikTok ironic witches or whatever who were indoctrinated into it, they're just part of the music as well, right? That's what they are. People who've been indoctrinated by such a deeply evil system that they become husks, dangerous, murderous, evil people, but they are not isolated. They are just a tip of the iceberg of the whole thing. And that's why we're left with this big challenge where it's at the point now where murder is on the table for any of us. And I've been thinking about it and kind of ruminating myself, because I'm allegedly a fascist as well, right? Long been one, according to these people. Since I first just started talking a bit about immigration, got the label right straight away, started noticing this and that, picking up on whatever. And I immediately saw the cruelty that they would, I'm like in my 20s, and I'm just online, and they're lying flagrantly about me, about what I said, what I've done, all this kind of stuff, just lying, and it's just unfamiliar. You're going, I'm not familiar with this level of dishonor and power, and you realize that they work for organizations, and you're unraveling it all, and it's just a kind of shock. You're going, and you realize then over time that was always in place. That is there for critics. When people criticize the state on these essential issues, there will be this thing, this serpent waiting for you. And that's what it is, but it's not on its own. The red pill is to realize that no, it's not just a bunch of lefties on its own. They are there on the outer flank because I've picked up on the scent, and I sense what's wrong around me. Not to act the saint, but I have the conscience, I have the stubbornness and all the rest of it to kind of not let it go. And they're picking up on that. This entity, this evil thing, is picking up on it. It's reading me. It's reading that I'm not, and this, I'm speaking about me, this could be any of us, right? It's reading that you were not going to stop, and you were not going to err towards the convenient, like when bumpkins in villages who were being given asylum centers, they always err towards, oh, well, it's just the services, we don't have them, and I love foreigners and I love everything, and it's just that I don't think it'd be fair on them and all that. The regime will back off on them because they go, okay, that's fine. That person, not to boast, but that bumpkin, that person has a weak enough set of traits in this regard that they will be, whether they know it or not, subconsciously driven off to the side by the carrot and stick approach and these sort of psychological mechanisms. But when they spot someone who goes, I'm not doing it for money, and I'm not deterred by negative stimuli, like negative kind of evil stimuli, like this doxing or harassing or lying or a nasty language, just not used to it. You're like going, why is this person saying that about me? That usually bats people off. If you're not doing that, and if you discover a deeper truth about whatever, it might be the race thing or this or that or the other, and you say, do you know what, I don't care. Like, it seems true to me. It seems right. It seems valid to me. Whatever it is, it seems just. And so it seems right to me. So I think I'll just go with that. And I don't think I'll be steered away. They sense all that. And so it's got nothing to do with Germany. It's got nothing to do with being necessarily out of step with what is the global standard viewpoint at a literal level among your average African, your average Chinese, your average this or that person, your average builder up on a scaffolding. He just doesn't say, I know I'm not out of step with any of that. So I'm not, it's nothing to do with some Germany costume thing. It's nothing to do with I'm actually objectively away from what is normally believed by people. It's more to do with the fact that I am onto you and I don't want to stop. I'm not stopping and I'm going to criticize it. That will have you picked up on as a fascist. That's what it is. That's all it is. And it is, I do agree with Fuentes, there must be, and you can read supernatural whatever way you want, AI, things that are more complex than we can comprehend, huge machinations globally, sort of, like Western regime, at a level we barely could conceptualize, or whether it's supernatural, like spirits flying around in the room, whatever sort of, however you want to take that, it is about forces, things that you sense, and looking inward on what is right, and sensing what is wrong, and sort of the day-to-day of this asylum center, that thing, what is a fascist exactly? Oh, sure, it does. There's no real thing on that. Is that racist? Is that not? Or did he say this or that? Any of that superficial stuff. Or like Micheál Martin, like I've been myself doing this last night. Oh, he said this today. I don't like Micheál Martin. It really, at the end of the day, is like, and we do talk about the details and we analyze an NGO and we do all that blah blah. And we go back and forth on Twitter. But there definitely is a deep spiritual battle underneath all of that as well. A political, obviously. I'm not too woo-woo on this stuff. It's just a large political battle that's almost beyond comprehension. Power, control, technology, all that stuff. Vested interests, strange things. But you can just kind of conceptualize it if you want to think of it that way. as a supernatural sort of spiritual battle. And people might say I'm just rehashing, because I know I'm riffing off what Fuentes was talking about. I don't want to feel like I'm just rehashing maybe what he said. This is stuff I've been feeling. I think in a way we all just arrive at some similar feelings when we see something, right, naturally, because it's just truth. Seeing Charlie Kirk get shot, whatever you think of him, and the reaction to all that, and the realization that that does track back to everything we've been seeing, that I've got involved in since 2015, and since I started to get attacked in my own small way, much smaller way. It was seeing him get shot was a manifestation of that. You realize that that's the ultimate conclusion of that evil entity, this kind of power control entity, is the sadism of dancing on your grave, where you just started by saying, I want to talk about it. If I'm wrong, these are the classic points. If I'm wrong, tell me how I'm wrong, but can I tell you why I think I'm right? Can we talk? Surely that's how we solve it. Surely that's how we talk. Can't we deliberate on it? Can't we talk? Can't we look each other in the eye and try to see the humanity in each other as well? Can we not do that? And you come back to this. These rules are structurally in place. No partisans, no debate. And we always wonder, why not? Because it's not about debate. It's not about truth. It's not about protecting weak people. It's not about it being against violence. It's not about Germany. It's not about any of that. It's about killing you, basically, is what it is, right? For having sense, for having consciousness, for having sentience, for having a sense of truth, and all the rest of it. That is the battle. That's all it is. Even the word Antifa and the word fascist and all that stuff, it's all nonsense in a way. It's crazy. It's nonsense. It does come down to that, about power, state control, deeper forces, all of that. And that's what we have. So it got me back to thinking about myself, right? I sometimes kind of go, like, I have this internal, and this just is brought to mind with recent events. I have this internal kind of, I think sometimes about it, like, I've been doing this, then I kind of lay off, and then I find myself busy and family, and you kind of go, this is, let me reframe it. Let me start again. Is that when I think about the fact that they laugh at and want to, let's never mind the laughter, the fact that they endorse and promote, they're actively indoctrinating people and pushing for the idea that cold-blooded murder for having an opinion rather than talking is great, is basically the new progressive standard. They're trying to push for that by making it a dialectic at the moment, right? And I do believe it's going to happen again. People talk about, is there going to be a right-wing response? Maybe. But I think, never mind the response, I think there's just going to be more. I think the same predatory, again, evil forces that did this will take so much delight at the reaction, at the sense of power, at the sense of just righteous indignation among our people, and not just the right-wingers, just people in general, good people, that they will feel a rush and a sense of excitement at that and want to do more. I think it's going to happen more. But it got me thinking about it. Okay, so they do that to Charlie Kirk. Even though I don't agree with Charlie Kirk on a whole lot, some stuff, it's not about that. They do it to Charlie Kirk, and thus they would do it to me, and they would do it to all of you. And then it got me thinking, I might talk to the neighbor 10 doors down, and he might say, oh, there's too many people coming into this place, the place is changing. I saw this on the news, and I don't, they're congregate, all that stuff, right? Giving out about foreigners, that kind of thing's pretty standard in Ireland these days. And let's say that person is a good person. He's a good man. He's a boomer or whatever, and he's a good man, and I like him. And he's talking about that, and I go, so they want to kill Charlie Kirk, and they want to kill me, and they want to kill all of you, and they want to kill him as well. Now, it's at different levels. If your head is down, you can maybe slide for a while. But ultimately, they want to kill anybody like that. And it just gets me thinking, like, okay, so the only option is to be completely quiet or throw you in a dungeon or whatever it might be for any of it. And so the only option would be to be completely quiet and go along with it. But then everything you know and love, because imagine a world where the most predatory, exploitative, evil forces have a free hand, not only all this power and advantage that they already have, but they don't have critics. They don't have challengers and opponents. The spiritual battle is one-sided. So let's say all the influencers, the big celebrities, the micro people, the guy on a YouTube late at night, the person posting online, TikToks, whatever, the leader of a little small political party or any of that stuff, right? Say they're all dead. And you drive it all the way back to now it's just, okay, there's still a majority of the country are fascists, so-called, because they're against some of the stuff, but they're quiet. They're the normies. It's only the normies now. Well, prepare for everything good in the world that you've ever known rapidly, not in 200 years, in year to year, to absolutely fall apart, right? And callous violence and no social order or harmony or beauty at all. None of that stuff, just complete and utter unbridled exploitation from like a power elite and just hell on earth and abuse of power and all the rest of it. And druggy warlord Mad Max type people, the most amoral scumbags, rapists, to basically have a free hand over society and all the rest of it. And if you say that's crazy, it's happening, right? It's happening now. It's happening a certain amount. It's happening way more now than it was 2 years ago, than it was 2 years before. We see it literally escalate in front of us. Not just online, in life, out there. You see it out there, right? And so prepare for that. So now that all the influencers or the people who stuck the head up, they're all dead. But now you're stuck with, you might as well be dead, right? Because it's so, so bad. And think of children who were born into that world. Think of the destruction of innocence and beauty and all the rest of it, right? Intolerable. And anyway, I'm thinking about that and I go, I'm already in it. It's kind of like that whole idea that, well, we have to kind of win. Maybe people think I'm like out of my head here, too like fanatical or too hyped up, or I don't know, maybe I am. But like, this is just my thoughts, that I'm sort of already positioned. I'm in the game a little bit, even though I'm wishy-washy. And it just gets me thinking about a sense of responsibility. Like, I know I'm a small fish and I just do my thing or whatever, but I'm out there. I know the stuff. I obviously can kind of talk, and I've got the basic capabilities in some senses. In some ways, or whatever. And yet then I don't take it seriously enough. I go, oh well, I'm kind of like, I'm kind of fucking fucked up, or I'm not like well adjusted enough or healthy enough, or I'm too flawed, or I'm too tired, or whatever it is, to like not do enough. Because I just think of these people who want to kill us, and I don't think that's an exaggeration, right? Who kind of want to kill us all in a way. These black holes that represent the entire power structure that we live under. This whole thing. They want to kill my neighbor too, and they want to kill the other people I know. They want to, ultimately that's it. And most of us are afraid, and most of us are quiet, and most of us are anonymous and all that stuff, and that's understandable. But it's kind of like you go, well, I'm already not those things. I'm already out. I've faced music. Maybe I'll face more music, but I'm in the game. And like, is there not a bigger responsibility, like a maximum responsibility to do more? And it's hard to know, like, do what exactly or whatever. But I feel that sense, that sense that like a certain burden. I don't know if you get that as well or whatever. And I don't know if I'm putting across exactly how I'm thinking about it. But like, it is kind of serious, you know. And it's, you could say, what, Charlie Kirk in America, you're making all this of just that. But like I mentioned in recent other streams, we had Lochern, we had women and children like almost being attacked with claw hammers by a masked group of men who were effectively state sanctioned. You know, it's not even about whoever those Antifa were. It's about the fact that me, Hall Martin, or whatever other cartoon caricature or cartoon cardboard cutout is what I'm trying to say. Whichever one of them is, like the whole kind of power elite. Again, like I say, the druggy warlord scumbag who runs an asylum center and like molests the women going through there and enslaves the men in a mushroom farm and all that. And all the fat cats at the top keeping their hands clean. They're in the suits, but they're up to their fucking knees in it. But they're officially, they're nothing, you know, they're a bit cleaner and a bit more respectable. This whole system is connected to all of that. These masked ghouls showing up, attacking people with hammers. I've been at the events, I've seen their faces. I've been at the events where I'm standing there and I'm going, there's nothing like some rally or whatever where there's a counter protest, where you're there going, like, they're across a barricade and they're hissing. And I'm thinking, I would love nothing more than to have a discussion. I'd love nothing more than if all of you Antifa and all of us, it sounds wishy-washy here, but if we could all go to some beer garden and get a few snacks and have a pint and have a big, interesting discussion about it, a passionate discussion about it. And, but you need to hear me out as well, you know what I mean? And believe that I am not whatever it is that you've been, I would say, indoctrinated, possessed into thinking some sort of illogical cult thing. But you don't have any of that. They've been tuned up by their conditioning. You look at them and you go, you do realize that you go, they would kill me if they could. Like they're standing 20 feet away from you and you look some of them in the eye and you're looking at them going, I'm looking at them going, I certainly don't want to kill you. I don't want to do anything to you. You know what I mean? I obviously disagree with you. I might want to disempower you and all that kind of stuff, but why would I want to kill you? Like, you know, I just want to talk to you. But you realize they're looking at you and they would kill you in a heartbeat. They would mob justice, stomp on you if they could, and they would all laugh about your death. And when any liberal normie in the middle said, oh, isn't that a bit wrong or whatever, they'd go, he said this, he said that, look at this tweet, look at this, that. And half of the shit would be exaggerated and something I didn't say anyway. And if, you know, maybe I'm going on here, but there was a Connor Fitzgerald earlier, a Twitter user, said, let's find some of this stuff. Now I'm just going to start scrolling Twitter, am I? But like, it was the Joe Brawley comment. Joe Brawley said, this like elevated pundit scumbag, he says, a white supremacist, talking about Charlie Kirk, a white supremacist who called for gays to be stoned and lampooned and lampooned black people as having low brain power. He also regularly said that black Americans had it better when they were slaves owned by wealthy white landowners, right? Whatever. First off, even if Charlie Kirk said all those things and he meant them exactly as described, so what? It's his view, right? Like, I mean, go to Africa and start asking people what they think about stuff. You know what I mean? Just ask random people. or whatever. It's just people, like, there's people all over the world and within societies and stuff who believe all sorts of things that I think are crazy, that they're very wrong and all that. But like, I wouldn't be like, well, he said that, so you can imagine why he got slaughtered in public in front of his kids. You know, that wouldn't cross my mind, right? But and the funny thing is that he obviously, these things you can tell by reading it. You go, that's like a third hand, this like a 3-level distillation of something he said into kind of misconstrued and you know, and all that kind of stuff. It's the worst possible interpretation. Anyway, Connor here says, I'll make a donation to Stonewall and post this, a gay rights organization or something. I will make a donation to Stonewall and post receipts if you can produce a quote from Kirk directly saying gay people should be stoned. And as I said to him, and as he knows himself, said, I don't think Joe Brawley would care if it was true or not. Because you think, let me show you how Charlie Kirk actually didn't say those things. He said something, a version of that, but not at all the way you're putting it, but much different thing. He basically didn't say it. Joe Brawley would just say, I imagine, I don't really care. Like, basically, if you manage to get Joe Brawley and like strap him to a chair and say, I'm going to put the evidence in your face and you have to acknowledge that it's not true now. And if Brawley said, okay, fine, he'd say, it doesn't matter. You go, but that's your basis for saying the man should be killed in front of his children. How can that not matter, right? That it's not even true. Like, so if you're not basing it on that, then what are you basing it on? I'm basing it on he's generally a fascist. Okay, so it's not the specific things, the points you're making. So you just don't care. You're just sadistic. You just want to see people killed. Is it? Question mark. That and bear in mind, if Brawley is glib about Kirk's death and feels like what Kirk may or may not have said bears some relationship or justification to him being slaughtered, if you think I'm being a bit too hysterical, you just have to remember that if he believes that for Kirk, he believes it for me. And if he believes it for me, he believes it for you. So that's what you're dealing with. And he's in power and I'm not, right? I'm on a stream here. He gets on RTE or whatever, the bullshit, right? And that's the important part, is that the demented people who believe this are not fringe cultists on their own. They are heavily integrated into the sort of mush middle society of like institutional society, right up to the highest levels. So, I don't know, you know, it is definitely a bit of a watershed type of thing. I think as well, there's no, I don't want to just go through Twitter. Maybe I should just leave it there. He's a barrister as well, is he? You know, the Irish Times, just here's a good John McGurk, right? I'm a critic of him, doesn't matter. Smart fella, he's right a lot of the time. He quotes this Irish Times article, and you've seen a lot of these. This is like par for the course. This is again shows you how it's all the way to the top right, because you're seeing this article pop up in the BBC, in the New York Times, this, that, and the other, right? And you know that thing where all the news stations, that video where all the news stations are saying the literal same phrases, you realize it's one entity, sort of. We don't quite understand it all, but it's basically one entity. We don't quite know what the background entity is exactly, but it is one entity, right? It's the same here. You've seen this exact piece framed exactly the same way going around New York Times and BBC, and I don't think it's just one big syndication. I think they're all just doing it as well. And here we have the Irish Times saying, Charlie Kirk, in his own words, prowling blacks and his views on gun. So he said something about black people, and he said, I don't know, he said something crazy about guns or whatever it is. And this is going around, and McGurk put it very well, kind of a hypothetical. He said, this is an Irish publication. It will be a long time before they do it. Paul Murphy, in his own words piece, taking the choicest and rawest red meat to have uttered forth from that particular mouth and placing them devoid of context filth, right? Bear in mind what that article is. You know, that is not saying, here's what Charlie Kirk believed. Let's sum up his beliefs overall. Let's just take a general sort of like, what did he say most often? What was did he claim were his core issues or whatever? You know, no. It is one big pastiche. Like I had this in the Irish Times back in the asylum industry days. They did this thing on the far right and Uachtarard, and it was a hit piece basically, right? With all the usual. These choice bits, an really old tweet, misinterpreted, 1 5-second bit from a video, that kind of thing, right? And you're going, okay, so they're doing a hardcore hit piece on Charlie Kirk, right? Now, bear in mind, the man was slaughtered in front of his children a few days ago. That's obviously why they're writing the piece. They don't write about Charlie Kirk every other week, right? So someone gets slaughtered, and as a response, in light of that, you say, let's do, as McGurk said, the most choicest, most defamatory piece that goes to great lengths to detail and put out of context things to smear him in the worst possible way. The guy was killed a few days ago out of nowhere. Like, that's the Irish Times. So when I talk about Antifa, they want to kill us all. They're happy with it. They condone it. And if they condone it for you, they do for me and all that. I'm not talking about a balaclavaed up junkie living in a flat somewhere in Leitrim or whatever, right? Some weirdo, some stalker or whatever. I'm not talking about just that, because this is the Irish Times, right? They're doing it too. And then Micheál Martin says it's incitement that if you say Ireland for the Irish, and if you're doing that, then you're obviously a violent person. And how do violent people get dealt with? They get thrown in prison or jailed or killed, right? So it's the whole thing. You know what I mean? That's just what I want to emphasize. It's not fringe. But anyway, I know, maybe I'll leave it there. It's I just feel like, this is a big moment. And I did have some people on my own side that were saying, don't run with this. This is Con Inc. stuff, or this is Anglo, or this is Zionist, or, it's like, it's not about Charlie Kirk per se. It's not about, I'm not coming out here attacking the left. Like, I don't even believe in that. It is about, like I've said, the regime control mechanisms. They might use the left-wing framing or whatever in a sense, but it's not, I don't think it's about any of that. It's like I said, it's about power and evil, effectively, and exploitation and abuse, and those who step up to it, effectively being told your life is forfeit, potentially. But and I know they caught the guy as well. There's loads more I could talk about with that. Yeah, I'll check the chat here. I have the super chat. Lockery says, authentic Irish, gives 5, thank you very much. Authentic Irish nationalism by nature is ethnic preservation, while anti-globalist hegemon in outlook. Blind compassion is weaponized against us, however. I agree. Just the idea that nationalism in Ireland, like, they're basically saying, if you believe what anyone in Ireland up until about arguably 20 years ago, and I could even say less, I could say 5, it's been incremental, but certainly up until 20 years ago was 2005. Let's say, to be safe, we'll go 25, 30 years ago, right? Because if you go back that far, anyone before that, it wasn't some, everyone was a fascist. They were an actual fucking goose-stepping fascist, according to these people, and their lives would be forfeit. That's their definition of a fascist. I'm having this like highbrow discussion with a guy on Twitter. What exactly is it? Would I be included? What's the terms? Death sentence belying that whole conversation, you fucking sick freak, right? But anyway, I'm just showing you all my likes here. Likes is how I do bookmarks. I don't, bookmarks are hard to get to. So if you know, I don't actually like everything that I like. It's just saving it. There's the guy George Zinn who initially said, "Shoot me, shoot me." The guy who was originally posted as the gunman, but he wasn't. What the fuck was that about? We don't really know. But you know, we're at a bit of a Lee Harvey Oswald JFK situation where the circumstances are definitely very weird. I don't know what take to give to it. You'll have to just wait for the stuff to come out. Do you believe, like, you know, when the FBI say it's this guy, we've arrested him, do you believe that at face value? Is that a bit naive? And but also, would it be naive to just dismiss it out of hand because you're being overly conspiratorial? I don't know. Like, where do you pick, you know, your level of faith in what? I don't know. You know, I would say either extreme, just believing it, or just straight up not believing it at all. Both of those are not very logical, to me. But you know, you have questions around it. You go, okay, so there's this kid in like a Mormon normie Republican seeming family, but he's hardcore Antifa. So is that a question of universities and culture indoctrinating people to become psychopaths, or is it a psyop, or what? And then who is this George Zinn character who's creating a ruckus after the shooting? Is it a Mossad op, as someone says here in the chat? I mean, I don't discount that at all. The Mossad, I wouldn't over egg it because you'd just be embarrassing yourself maybe to, you know, when people say it was definitely Mossad. Obviously, it's about degrees of probability or whatever, you know. Can't say it was definitely Mossad. It absolutely might not have been at all, right? But to me, there's a few reasons. It's like, for one, they're going back to the Sakari, you know, and you know, Josephus and whatever, all that. The what's it called again? The siege of so and so. Anyway, the Romans and all that. Yeah, the Sakari, the assassins, you know. And to this day with Mossad and the rest of it, the assassination, the complex plots, you know, it's not at a reach to say that Israel is sort of almost a suspect of these sorts of things by default. That's not vacuous. That's not just being silly. It's like there is actually a reason. There's enough of a background for that to almost be a starting proposition when these things happen, to be honest. Look at the exploding pagers. Look at every bit of infrastructure just randomly blowing up in Iran all the time. Think of how secure Iran must be, right? Think about if you go to Iran and you just want to go around in Iran and fuck around. You want to look at things, you want to steal things, you want to spy on things, whatever. Think of how hard that would be. It's not like if you went to, you know, London or something, you know, nobody knows who anyone is, and it's this big thing, melting pot or whatever, open society. You're dealing with a closed, paranoid, secure, nationalistic, wary society, you know, and you have bombs and all sorts of shit being planted all over the place, long in advance, assassinations left, right, and center, exploding pagers. I'm forgetting some of the other ones. You know, that is the MO, right? Sowing all sorts of discord, shocking people with the chutzpah, and of course they have an interest in American affairs, and they're very closely connected to Charlie Kirk, and he was, whether it was superficial or not, he was doing an about face on Israel. And there were those comments he made to other people that he was getting a lot of flack from them, and he was worried, and all the rest of it, and how that relates to Trump and what Trump is doing with Israel and the Epstein stuff with all that. Like, you take all that into account from the assassin ideology or MO, as we see everywhere in the Middle East and elsewhere in the last half century. and then how inextricably connected it is to Charlie Kirk and to Trump and to Israel and the Epstein and all that. It's hard to dismiss the involvement. What it does to the culture war, right? For everything I've said about Antifa, it's all true. It is demonic. It is all the rest of it. But it is also true that I have said, and others have said for months now, that, there is clearly a program to weaponize the right against the pro-Palestine sentiment in the West. That is largely left-wing, but is just kind of universal as well. And the right are this kind of golem to stop that. A popular, like a large population group who have legitimate grievances against the state, etc. already, immigration and all of that. And if you could just tack them up with the Zionism thing and create the oppositional thing, you cancel it all out and maintain domestic support and regime support in the West for Israel. It's basically a front in their battle for greater Israel against the likes of Iran. It is effectively like a war front, especially America. And it is obviously done through the right wing. Just look at Trump, look at cracking down on universities and all the rest of it. And Charlie Kirk is connected to that, and he's got pressure from Fuentes, and the right wing is going through this kind of revolution, this kind of internal battle on that. There's basically a battle taking place over that, and Charlie Kirk is right in the center of it. And then he shows up dead. He gets executed in public. And now right-wing people are naturally and totally understandably clamoring for Trump, the government in power, to ruthlessly destroy the left, right? Which is a misplaced anger. You want to destroy Antifa, and as I believe that Antifa is connected to the regime and is ultimately connected to this Jewish narrative and this Zionist narrative about fascists and World War II and blah, 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 and all that, that is all connected up. So the distinction between the left and all of that is wrong. It's Antifa and what Antifa stems from, which is effectively the whole thing. And in a way, that includes Trump. It's complicated. But from a Zionist point of view, to have it misframed, but very easily so, because it does look at the surface like left and right and all that, it could easily be framed up to justify a Patriot Act 2, War on Terror 2 against the left and the pro-Palestinians and all the rest of it. If this was a few weeks ago before Kirk was assassinated, and you would ask myself or a lot of other people who think this way as well, could you see Israel doing some sort of false flag operation in America to pursue this line, right? A lot of people would have said, absolutely. In fact, I'm sitting here waiting for it. And if you said, well, what does that look like? You'd go, I don't know exactly. Some sort of 9/11 type thing, some sort of mass casualty terrorist attack. And then if someone said, what else? He would go, perhaps assassinating Trump under the pretense of this or that. It could be a Iranian assassinated Trump. It could be a left winger, but it would justify, it would basically get the right people foaming at the eyeballs to support the crackdown on what's called the left or the pro-Palestine thing or whatever, and basically lock down the West for Israel. That would actually do the job. They have form of doing those kind of things. They have a need and a want to do that kind of thing. It makes sense. So in a certain way, maybe it won't happen, but I am sort of waiting for it. Now, if someone said, what if it wasn't Trump per se? Like, okay, Trump, but like who else? Now, if you did that who else game, it wouldn't take you very long, would it? It wouldn't take you long before you would go, I don't know, maybe Charlie Kirk. Maybe right in front of everyone, maybe in the most gruesome manner possible. to start this chain of events, effectively some sort of civil conflict based on left and right and all of that, and America gets caught up on itself. And you have Trump in charge, and they sort of clamp down on the whole thing to bring it to a stop, but ends up being a huge purge of the left and all that. That whole theory is not bonkers. You know what I mean? It's just not. I don't buy it. I don't just go, oh, that's it. A lot of people do. I don't. It might have been just this Mormon kid indoctrinated, possessed effectively, and did it just like that. And the left do need to be, or not the left, but Antifa need to effectively be purged, as Fuentes said, destroyed, eradicated, right? And I do believe that they do need to be eradicated. They must be eradicated, because more of this stuff's going to happen. But but it's complicated. It's a complicated picture. Anyway, I just wanted to bring some of that up. What's actually going on. I don't think we can be necessarily too confident about that. So anyway, I'm going to leave it there. Yeah, that's enough. That's enough. I'm finished. I think I am. What else have we got? No, it's too late. So, thanks for joining me, lads. I'll read a few. Any chats to have a look at? Not super chats, just regular ones. Excuse me. People talking about, someone mentions the Unbroken Man YouTuber. So many good new YouTubers, content creators in Ireland at the moment. Yeah, there's no point in me reading the chat. I can barely see it. It's too far away from me anyway. I'm just seeing if you agree with me on some of this stuff, like the Israel thing and all that. Maybe. But yeah, so a big responsibility, lads. Going forward, it's kind of like, it's not just to wrap up. It's not just a bit of culture war, a bit of Twitter, a bit of enjoy it, a bit of crack. Oh, look, the society is really shitty. Isn't that mad? Look at this happened. Look at that happened. Look, there's a gypsy stealing, a swan out of a lake or whatever and eating it, some would say. It's very serious as well. You know what I mean? The other thing, just one point I had intended to make, is that we are in a time where, because of some of the Israel and that kind of underground stuff that I've mentioned, because of that, we have Musk Twitter, we have this release of pressure on what are called the far right. We're getting a break. Bear in mind, after the Great Awakening, there was all this black stuff, and and that caused a reaction, and 2016 happened, and to some extent that was probably allowed. And then Charlottesville happened, and after that precipitated this huge clampdown, and everything went dead because nobody could make money, no one could be online, no one could survive, people were being doxxed and harassed and threatened, all the rest of it. It was turned to switched off, basically, and they had pure power over us. And now we're actually in a peak phase, realistically, where we have the freedom, you have Musk, Trump, and all that. Even if it might be for corrupt, larger motivations, they do have a reason to kind of give us a bit of a break. And in this moment, we see hardcore bloodlust coming from these people. And that's when we have the handcuffs off. What about in a few years? Do you remember when George Floyd happened and they just dialed it up, right? And there was this, effectively call it a black terror. And you had bloggers being like, I'm sorry, I didn't post the black square. I didn't understand, but I have been educated and I now understand. And we almost educate. It was demented, right? The normies even got whipped into shape over the space of about 3 days. It was like something out of a sci-fi movie, how you could get brains up to speed that quickly and get them all catatonically, robotically repeating the mantra. We saw it with COVID itself. So if we're in a period of temporary liberation now, imagine when we get locked down again, so to speak, and the racial terror gets ramped up, but now with bigger numbers of foreigners, and where the Antifa are given free reign again, more power again, like more open power, and we start being suppressed. Think about that then. The next increment like that could be brutal, could be them arriving at people's doors, dragging people out of houses and all that kind of stuff. That could be, the conditions are there for if the dial got turned the next time, because you have the greater numbers of foreigners. Like, we're within a few years of being a minority, probably, right? In effect, at a street level. And it's not that all foreigners are bad. It's just that foreigners, same way like impressionable young ones can be like possessed into supporting murder, and like with glee, and because of just maybe a certain type of particular disposition, foreigners by nature can of course be completely gotten on board with that to a greater degree, because they're foreigners, because they've got a self-interest, because they can be indoctrinated and they can be instrumentalized. And so when your society is made up fully of foreigners and the Antifa are given the power and you're suppressed, and some sort of COVID, they were happy for you to die on the street if you didn't get a jab and all that, and the normies, and then they get the normies, like that's the key thing, the normies in the middle who might say, well, I don't know if I'm quite comfortable with murdering someone. Well, then they're dialed up as well, dial down, whatever. And so now there's no barrier anymore. The whole thing, the whole game set match, they're dragging you out onto the street and they're killing you on the spot, right? And they're doing it to me, and they're doing it to you, and they're doing it to anyone with even the slightest whiff. And it's like full on Spanish Civil War, but worse. Realistically, as bad as it is now, we're in a lull. If the ingredients all set up for that, the next round, we could be facing that for real. You know what I mean? And that's just what I want to emphasize, not to be grim, but that's kind of, and I'm not saying it like oh no, what's going to happen to me? Whatever. Just that's at a larger scale. That's the kind of reality we're actually not too far from at all, potentially. And so it's not just like online stuff and we're saying this and we're saying that and it's Charlie Kirk over there. The line between going from kind of that to off the wall and obscene and extreme could be very, very thin, very quick, depending on the conditions. And that's what that's what I'm gleaning from this last few days. And so, you're in zero-sum territory then, aren't you? Where it's like, I think we have to push, don't we? I don't know how exactly. I need to be better. But it's kind of like there's no choice, Fuentes with his fucking, historic stream last night, very good and all that, but he said this too. It's kind of like just we have to win, like, or we're fucked, basically. I mean, it could happen. I do definitely see that, and I could see, just like with COVID, where the entire society is switched into a mode where, and it's just, you see it now with, well, the idea of killing someone or not is a debate. That's the start of something, right? That is a setup, as far as I'm concerned. But anyway, enough is enough. I'm just rambling now. I know I am. So yeah, thanks for watching. Don't worry about it. Don't want to send you to bed with all that. We will be grand. But okay, one more thing is that I would say, for like, Imperator Scotorum said this last night, we need people with money, people to be successful, people to get into power and all of that. We definitely do, but I just have, like, your Unbroken Man, your Michael McCarthy's, your all these people out there, Keith and all the others, who are doing good stuff. Like, basically, we have people. I'm not speaking for myself at all. But it's almost like the people that are there need to be backed up, if you're not, it's like that whole thing of like get people to be very rich and powerful. It's like absolutely get someone to be really rich and give Michael McCarthy 100 grand. You know what I mean? Just like it's going to be, it has to be sort of professional, and it has to be backed up, and it has to be supported. People will need to have, you know, if someone gets in trouble, whether it's with the state or whether it's with, you know, whatever it might be, having to leave home or go here, all that stuff, like that whole thing of offering support to people in all sorts of different ways among each other, this kind of system. For those who are saying it, they're saying it right and they're doing it well and all of that, they definitely need to be supported. And there needs to be all this kind of networking, I believe, in that kind of way. But it involves a general like uplifting of everybody, you know. I do think that as well. That's important. I think people are already doing that to some extent. So anyway, God bless, lads. Thanks for joining me again tonight. Ihawa. See you.